Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt the quiet sting of disappointment? Not because the world gave up on you, but because you did. You promised yourself you'd change. You said this time would be different. And yet here you are, standing in the ruins of broken promises, wondering if you'll ever truly respect yourself again. My friend, that moment, the one that feels like the end, is not the end. It's the beginning of something greater if you dare to rebuild. There comes a point in every person's life when the hardest person to face isn't the critic, the boss, or the family member who doubts you. It's you. It's that quiet conversation you have in the mirror when no one's watching. The moment you realize you've broken your own word, compromised your own values, or settled for less than you promised yourself. And in that silence, something begins to happen. You feel the erosion of respect, not from the world, but from within. That's when people start to drift into comfort, excuses, and denial. Because when you lose respect for yourself, you lose your drive. You stop demanding excellence. You begin to tolerate mediocrity. But here's the truth: most never hear failure doesn't destroy self-respect. Surrender does. You can rebuild that respect piece by piece, just like you build a strong body or a successful business. It's not easy, it's not instant, but it's possible and it's powerful. So if you've ever failed, if you've ever let yourself down, this message is for you. Stay with me until the end, because by the time we finish, you'll have the blueprint to rebuild not just your confidence, but your character. The first real work of rebuilding self, respect, begins in silence, not in the noise of motivation, not in the company of others, but in that lonely space where you decide to face the truth about yourself. That moment doesn't feel heroic. It feels heavy. It's uncomfortable, sometimes even humiliating, because honesty strips away the layers you've been hiding behind. But that's exactly where real strength begins. You can't rebuild what you continue to deny. You can't rise from ruins you refuse to admit exist. Most people spend their lives escaping truth, decorating failure with fancy excuses, and blaming circumstances for outcomes that were created by their own habits. They lie to themselves not because they want to, but because it's easier than facing what they've become. Yet, every time you lie to yourself, you trade away a little bit of your self-respect. Honesty is not about guilt, it's about clarity. You can't correct what you won't confront. When a person decides to look themselves in the mirror and say, "I did this to me," they unlock the first door to freedom. You see, as long as you believe someone else is responsible for your current condition, you remain powerless to change it. But when you accept that you are the cause, you instantly become the cure. That shift in ownership from blame to responsibility is the seed from which self-respect grows again. It doesn't mean you have to beat yourself up. It means you have to tell yourself the truth. With compassion, but without compromise. Take a quiet hour with yourself and ask the hard questions most people avoid. Where did I go wrong? What habits have I been protecting that are destroying me? What promises have I broken to myself and to others? What did I say I would do that I quietly abandoned? The answers won't come easily. The ego will resist. It will argue, justify, and defend. But the truth doesn't need defending. It simply waits for you to stop lying long enough to see it. When you find the courage to tell yourself the truth, you no longer fear it. You begin to work with it. It's not the failures that destroy people, it's the refusal to face them. A man can fail 1,000 times and still rise again if he's honest about why he fell. But one lie, one denial, can trap him for years because dishonesty robs him of power. There's something almost sacred about truth. The moment you speak it, your energy changes. Your back straightens. You feel real again. You can breathe. The weight you've been carrying, the weight of pretending, begins to lift. You no longer have to live two lives, the one you show the world and the one you secretly hide. When people talk about confidence, they often misunderstand it. True confidence doesn't come from how you look, what you wear, or how others see you. It comes from knowing that what you think, say, and do are aligned. When your private reality matches your public image, when you don't have to fake it anymore, when your word is clean. That's confidence. That's respect. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth because you already believe it. And that belief begins with truth. Honesty also requires humility. You must be willing to admit that you were wrong, that you made poor choices, that you settled for less, that you let your emotions lead where discipline should have. Humility doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. Pride says, I don't need to change. Humility says, I can do better. And only the second voice has the power to rebuild self-respect. You can't heal if you keep pretending you're not hurt. You can't improve if you keep pretending you're already fine. The most courageous thing you can do is to drop the act and say, here's where I truly am. When you do that, something powerful begins to shift. Life stops being a performance and starts becoming a process. You stop trying to impress others and start improving yourself. You stop chasing validation and start chasing truth. The mirror that once haunted you becomes a teacher. Each time you look into it, you don't just see a reflection, you see potential. The person staring back at you may not be where they want to be, but at least now they know where they stand. And knowing where you stand is the first step toward knowing where to go. Facing the truth doesn't mean you dwell in regret. Regret is the anchor of the past. Reflection is the engine of progress. Regret says, I can't believe I did that. Reflection says, now I know what not to do next time. That's the difference between those who get stuck and those who grow. Regret chains you to your past mistakes. Reflection turns them into stepping stones. When you take honest inventory, you're not doing it to feel worse. You're doing it to get better. You're separating fact from fiction, emotion from evidence, illusion from reality. Think about the people who've changed their lives dramatically. The ones who rose from addiction, from bankruptcy, from brokenness. Every one of them started with a moment of truth, a line drawn in the sand, a realization that said, no more lies. That's when the power returns. When you stop lying to yourself, life starts cooperating with you again. Opportunities appear. Energy comes back. People respect you more because you're no longer hiding. The world has a strange way of rewarding those who are honest with themselves. Honesty also has a way of clarifying priorities. When you admit what you've been avoiding, you begin to see what truly matters. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your relationships. Maybe it's your work ethic. Maybe it's your habits. Whatever it is, once you face it, you can fix it. But you can't fix what you won't face. The man who refuses to see his flaws stays enslaved by them. The man who faces them begins to master them. That's how growth begins. Not with motivation, but with admission. There's also another layer to honesty. Emotional honesty. It's not just about what you did. It's about how you feel. You can't heal what you won't feel. If you're angry, admit it. If you're disappointed, admit it. If you feel lost, admit it. Pretending to be okay when you're not doesn't make you strong. It makes you stuck. But when you're emotionally truthful, you create space for recovery. Pain acknowledged is pain that can be transformed. Pain denied is pain that deepens. When you take honest inventory, you start to see patterns. Patterns of behavior, thinking, and belief. You begin to notice how often you broke your own word. You remember the times you chose comfort over commitment, pleasure over progress, distraction over discipline. And instead of judging yourself for it, you study it. You become a student of your own history, because when you learn from your past, you no longer repeat it. That's the power of introspection. This process isn't pleasant. It's not meant to be. Growth is uncomfortable because truth is uncomfortable. But it's also liberating. You'll notice that the more truth you face, the less you fear. The more honest you become, the lighter you feel. And one day, when someone asks you how you rebuilt your life, you'll say, I stopped lying to myself. That's where it all begins. Not with luck, not with opportunity, not with talent, but with truth. Every ounce of strength, every ounce of respect, every ounce of progress you desire begins with a single decision to stop pretending and start confronting. You owe it to yourself to know exactly where you stand. Because once you know where you stand, you can finally decide where to go. Once you've faced the truth and accepted responsibility, the next stage of rebuilding self-respect is to rebuild trust. And trust is not rebuilt by words or wishes. It's rebuilt by discipline. There's no shortcut, no magical affirmation that replaces the steady rhythm of doing what you said you would do every single day. The moment you decide to become a person who keeps promises to yourself, life begins to change shape. You feel the quiet satisfaction of movement again. You start to look at yourself differently because you know you can rely on you. Self-trust is the foundation of self-respect, and discipline is the tool that builds it brick by brick. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act, but that's not how trust works. Motivation is emotion, and emotion is unpredictable. Some days you'll feel inspired, and some days you won't. Discipline doesn't care about feelings. Discipline is the commitment to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. It's the ability to command yourself. When you say, "I will," and then you follow through, even on the smallest task, you strengthen your internal reputation. You start to believe that your own word carries weight. That belief is worth more than applause because it creates integrity within you. The rebuilding process is slow at first because self-trust has to be earned the same way trust from another person is earned, through consistency. When someone breaks your trust, you don't instantly believe them again just because they apologize. You watch what they do next. You wait to see if their actions match their words. The same principle applies to yourself. If you've broken promises to yourself over the years, promises to eat better, to read daily, to save money, to stop procrastinating, then your inner self no longer believes your own declarations. It hears your big plans and quietly thinks, "We'll see." So you rebuild that faith one small act of discipline at a time. Start with something simple. Set a small, clear, non-negotiable promise. Maybe it's waking up at a certain time, or writing 1 page a day, or walking for 20 minutes. It's not the size of the task that matters, it's the sincerity of the commitment. Each time you complete it, you send a signal to your mind that says, "I can trust me again." That signal is subtle at first, but it grows stronger with repetition. Eventually, that trust becomes your identity. You go from being someone who hopes to someone who executes, from someone who plans to someone who performs. Discipline is like a muscle. It starts weak and sore, but grows stronger through resistance. You won't always feel like doing what you promised, but that's the exact moment where the rebuilding happens. The temptation to quit, to delay, to compromise. Those are the moments that shape your character. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you reinforce a new belief. I'm the kind of person who follows through. That's where confidence comes from. Not from success itself, but from knowing you have control over your actions. People often misunderstand discipline as punishment, but it's actually an act of respect. It's telling yourself, "I'm worth the effort. My goals matter enough to me to stay consistent." When you treat your commitments with seriousness, you teach your subconscious that your words have value. That's how you begin to walk taller, think clearer, and act bolder. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you become stronger inside. You've stopped living by moods and started living by principles. Discipline also restores dignity because it reintroduces structure. Chaos breeds shame, but order creates confidence. When your days have rhythm, when you know what to do, when to do it, and why you're doing it, you feel grounded. You're no longer drifting through life, reacting to whatever happens. You're directing your energy intentionally. That's the essence of self-leadership, to become the kind of person who can trust themselves to follow through even when no one is watching. The world doesn't reward potential, it rewards proof. And discipline is proof of intent. It's the demonstration that you're serious about change. You can talk about your dreams all you want, but talk without discipline is noise. People begin to respect you again when they see that your actions now match your ambitions. More importantly, you begin to respect yourself again because you know you're doing the work, not just wishing for results. Rebuilding self trust through discipline also means honoring your boundaries. When you say no to distractions, to laziness, to self-destructive behaviors, you're reinforcing that your time and energy are valuable. Each no is a vote for your future. It's proof that you're willing to protect what matters. People who lack discipline often think they're being kind to themselves when they indulge in comfort, but in truth, they're eroding the very respect they crave. True kindness to yourself is keeping promises that shape your growth. At first, no one may notice your discipline. There won't be applause for your early mornings or quiet evenings of study, but deep inside, something starts to shift. You begin to walk differently. You carry a certain calm confidence because you know your word means something again. You can feel the pride returning, not the loud kind that brags, but the steady kind that doesn't need to. You begin to see that self-respect isn't something you wait for others to give. It's something you earn through daily accountability. Discipline also heals the guilt of past failures. When you take consistent action, you stop identifying with your old mistakes. You realize that you're not defined by what you didn't do yesterday, but by what you choose to do today. Each disciplined act is a quiet redemption, a step away from shame and toward strength. It's proof that you've learned from your past instead of being imprisoned by it. There's something powerful about watching yourself keep a promise that once felt impossible. You start to recognize that you can control your habits, your mindset, your direction. That control is the essence of freedom. Most people think freedom means doing whatever you want, but real freedom is the ability to do what you should, even when it's hard. Discipline gives you that power. It takes you from being a slave to impulses to being the master of them. You'll also discover that discipline compounds. One act of follow-through leads to another. You keep one promise, and suddenly keeping the next one feels easier. It's like momentum. You build it through action, not thought. And as the days turn into weeks, and the weeks into months, you begin to notice that self-respect is no longer something you're chasing. It's something you're living. The danger, however, is to expect instant transformation. Rebuilding trust takes time. Just like a bridge takes longer to rebuild than to destroy, your internal credibility takes patience to restore. There will be days when you slip, days when you feel like you're back at zero. But discipline isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. Every time you fall and get back up, you're reinforcing the message that you won't quit on yourself again. And that's what this stage of rebuilding self-respect is really about, proving to yourself that you can be counted on. When you can rely on your own word, life becomes simpler. You don't need to overthink, overpromise, or impress. You just act because your identity has changed from someone who wishes to someone who works. That's how you earn back your power. You become your own source of motivation, your own source of accountability, your own source of respect. You begin to realize that every small act of discipline carries more weight than 1,000 declarations of intention. You stop looking for the perfect time because you've learned that the time is always now. You stop waiting for ideal conditions because you've learned that progress is built in imperfection. You stop depending on others for validation because the proof of your worth is written in your actions. When you live this way long enough, the internal trust you've built becomes unshakable. People can doubt you, criticize you, misunderstand you, but they can't make you doubt yourself because you know what you've done. You've earned your respect through action. You've rebuilt it through consistency. And that feeling of trusting yourself again is one of the greatest rewards a person can ever experience. At some point in the journey of rebuilding self-respect, you have to come face to face with the idea of failure itself. Failure isn't just an event, it's an emotion. It's the sting of disappointment, the echo of effort that didn't pay off, the voice that whispers, "You're not enough." Most people spend their lives running from failure, pretending it didn't happen or burying it under excuses. But if you want to rebuild your sense of worth, you have to change the way you see it. Failure is not your enemy, it's your mirror. It doesn't show you who you were supposed to be. It shows you who you actually are, and from that clarity, you can grow stronger than before. When you fall, the instinct is to protect your ego, to say, "It wasn't my fault," or "It just wasn't meant to be." But that protection becomes a prison. The more you shield yourself from failure, the more you repeat it. Because failure isn't meant to destroy you, it's meant to instruct you. Every mistake carries a message, and if you ignore it, you're forced to learn the same lesson again and again until you finally listen. When you learn to see failure as feedback, you stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as in progress. That small shift in perspective is the turning point between self-doubt and self-respect. Every successful person has a history of failures behind them, but what separates them from those who stay stuck is how they respond to it. They don't let failure define their identity. They let it refine their process. They understand that falling short doesn't mean they're unworthy. It simply means they're still learning. You can't grow without breaking something first. You can't rebuild without dismantling what wasn't working. Failure is how life clears the path. It removes the illusions, exposes the weaknesses, and forces you to look deeper. It hurts, yes, but it also heals if you let it. The real tragedy isn't in failing. It's in interpreting failure as final. You can make peace with falling if you believe it's part of your development. But if you believe it's the end of your story, you'll never rise again. That's why rebuilding self-respect requires you to change your relationship with failure. Instead of seeing it as proof that you're not good enough, see it as proof that you tried. The courage to try is itself an act of self-respect. It means you are willing to risk comfort for the possibility of growth. Most people never even reach that point. They stay safe, avoid risk, and call it wisdom. But it's not wisdom, it's fear disguised as logic. And fear erodes self-respect faster than any failure ever could. Every failure carries two gifts: revelation and resilience. Revelation shows you what went wrong, what belief, behavior, or pattern led to the fall. Resilience shows you that you can recover from it. When you fail and rise again, something permanent changes inside you. You no longer fear setbacks because you've survived them. You start to trust your ability to adapt. That's how confidence is born, not from avoiding mistakes, but from outlasting them. The more you rise, the less you fear falling. But this process only works if you reflect honestly. You can't learn from what you won't analyze. After every setback, sit quietly with yourself and ask, what did I learn? What can I do better next time? Don't drown in self-pity. Use that energy for discovery. Failure is not there to humiliate you. It's there to teach you humility. It reminds you that you don't know everything, that there's more to learn, that you still have room to grow. And humility doesn't make you small. It makes you wise. It keeps you open to change. Think about the way nature handles failure. A tree that loses its leaves in the fall doesn't see it as the end. It knows renewal is coming. The seed that breaks open in the soil doesn't mourn the breaking. It understands it's part of becoming. Humans, too, are designed to evolve through struggle. The pain of failing is the cracking of old identity, the breaking of ego, the birth of strength. But if you label that pain as permanent, you never reach the transformation waiting beyond it. Sometimes failure feels especially cruel because it happens after you gave your best effort. You did everything right, you stayed consistent, and still it didn't work out. In those moments, respect for yourself can feel hard to hold on to. You start to question your worth, your decisions, your direction. But those moments test more than your ability. They test your character. Will you still believe in yourself when there's no applause, no evidence, no validation? Because that's where true respect is rebuilt. In the unseen hours, in the quiet moments after defeat, when you choose to keep moving anyway. There's also a hidden wisdom in failure. It strips away illusions about who you are. It shows you what truly matters. When everything falls apart, the noise fades. You stop chasing approval and start searching for purpose. Failure humbles you, but it also clarifies you. It teaches you to value effort over outcome, integrity over image, progress over perfection. When you start living by those values, Self-respect becomes natural again because you're no longer performing, you're becoming. The more you practice this, the more you begin to see that failure isn't personal. It's not a judgment, it's a process. The universe isn't punishing you, it's preparing you. It's showing you what skills you lack, what discipline you need, what patience you must develop. Every fall reveals a missing piece, and every rise fills it in. Over time, you realize that each failure was a building block in disguise, each setback a setup for deeper strength. There will always be moments when the sting of failure feels unbearable, when it feels like you've lost more than you can handle. But even then, you have a choice. You can let the pain harden you, or you can let it shape you. You can close your heart in bitterness, or you can open it in understanding. Those who choose to open always come out wiser, calmer, more grounded. They've learned that the respect they were searching for wasn't out there. It was waiting for them to earn it through resilience. You rebuild self-respect by turning failure into fuel. You look at what went wrong, take the lesson, and apply it forward. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? That single shift moves you from victimhood to victory. It changes the tone of your entire life. Suddenly, every obstacle becomes an opportunity, every disappointment becomes a direction. You stop being afraid of failing because you understand that each failure brings you closer to mastery. In time, you start to look back at the moments that once broke you and realize they were the very moments that built you. The embarrassment, the rejection, the loss, they became the foundation of your strength. You see that without them, you would still be fragile, uncertain, easily shaken. But now, after falling and rising countless times, you carry a kind of quiet power. You're not unbreakable. You just know that even if you break again, you'll rebuild. That's the real essence of self-respect. It's not built on perfection, success, or applause. It's built on recovery, perseverance, and self-awareness. It's knowing that you can trust yourself not only when things go right, but especially when they go wrong. Failure ceases to scare you because you've transformed it from something that defines you into something that refines you. And once you reach that understanding, life changes. You stop waiting for permission to begin again. You stop letting the past dictate your future. You stop hiding behind fear. Because now you know that every time you rise after falling, you're not just rebuilding a goal. You're rebuilding your respect, your dignity, your belief in who you truly are.